I think one of the biggest problems that we have in humanity is the understanding of war and the causes of war, who declares war, and what are the reaction to this declaration of war. We get brainwashed all the time. History books are full of nationalism because history books are promoted by the state. Germany, according to history books, declared war against Poland in 1939. The German people are not interested in war. The Polish people are not interested in war. The leaderships are at war. And of course, along with the leaderships are the secret interests behind the leaderships, the secret interests, the arms dealers, the imperialism, the wealth that could come from a war. That is what guides a lot of the wars and the declarations of war. The people are the ones who fight the war, and therefore they don't want the war. Most people, the citizens, never want a war unless they're invaded. If they're invaded, then they'll go to war. But they will never easily declare war because they end up dying themselves. The leaders don't fight these wars. The people do. I mean, we need to be precise in the history books. I mean, the government of Germany, Nazi Germany, which was a dictatorship at the time, made an alliance with the Soviet management, right, in order to attack Poland. They had the okay to go ahead and attack Poland without Russian retaliation, and they divided Poland. Germany took a part of Poland, and the Russians took a part of Poland. So where is this in history books? This is a management kind of decision that happened in Second World War. In the beginning of the Second World War was a management problem. 55 million people died, not because people hated each other's guts, but because governments went to war with other governments. I mean, if my government declares war on another country, am I declaring war on another country? No, I'm not. Often the government is a completely different entity, a different psychology than the people. There is a disunity and a division between the government and the people. The government doesn't understand the people. The people are struggling to survive. They're struggling to pay the rent. They're struggling for mortgage. They're struggling to pay the car and the internet and the iPhone, right? The leaders don't care about any of this stuff. They worry about how other countries and other politicians are faring and what kind of alliances they made. A lot of it for personal gain, not exactly for the gain of the people. The well-being of the people is the last agenda of almost every government on the planet. So how do you go to war? How do you incite how did the Germans incite their people to attack Polish people like they were dogs? You have to basically have a propaganda machine of hatred, racism, and nationalism that is heavily sold to the people so that the real people who really don't have much hatred for each other end up fighting it themselves to death over nothing, over the power and the imperialism of the usually dictatorships of the countries. Nazi Germany is not Germany. Nazi Germany was a crazy party that took over Germany, that took over the Germans, that brainwashed the Germans to try to take over the world. The Germans never really were involved in the Second World War, except through brainwashing. It was the desires and the ambitions of Hitler and the Nazi Party which was responsible for that 55 million deaths in the Second World War. It was not the average German person who really doesn't want a war, just like any other normal person. We don't have a Star Trek type humanity because of all these horrors that happen because of the brainwashing of the people. We still have on planet Earth a very intensive hatred, racial hatred, racism, nationalism, very, very heavy, that is sold by the governments themselves. The governments don't want to unite, and they like their people, disunited as well. They don't want a united planet because a united planet would make them fail. It would require a completely different kind of government, a government that actually serves the people, which present day type governments don't want to serve the people. They don't want to face survival issues, which is the number one problem on the planet. The history books that we have today have so many errors in them. I mean, they talk about explorers, right? Like Columbus, this type of person as some kind of explorer. They were not explorers, they were pirates. They were people who were sent here by kings and queens to loot and to make as much money as possible for those kings and queens. They were not exploring anything. They were here to make money. We need to rewrite history to be precise about what was happening at the time. There's a cover-up about the real intentions of war, about who was responsible for the war, and we pit country against country, people against people, when really there isn't much conflict between the people in general. Most people want the same things. Right? Ethnic division is usually not strong enough to warrant war, right? Unless the leadership decides to have war. If there's a king who declares war on another king, question is, are the people at war? The answer is no. They are not at war. One king is at war with another king. When Napoleon wanted to conquer Europe and even Russia, was it the desire of the French people to do this? No, it was Napoleon's personal ambition. Well, today, the same situation is happening in the governments. The governments have their secret agendas, their secret interests, and the backers of the governments who desire certain wars. The people don't want the war. The leadership of the country wants the war. That's different than the people. We have to make a division. We have to make a distinction between the leadership of a country and the people of the country. That's very, very different. What the American people want, for example, is different than what the leadership of the United States wants. It's a very different intelligence. American people don't want any wars. They don't want their children murdered in Vietnam and Afghanistan and Iraq and all this kind of. They don't want these wars, but the leadership finds very, very strong interests for these wars for special reasons. Right? And it's not exactly to bring democracy to the world. In World War I, the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, and that created a pinball effect where 6 pinballs got into a pinball machine and everybody went crazy because of all the alliances of all the kings and queens and ruling parties, which gave way to World War I, which created 17 million people died because of all political shenanigans. Humanity doesn't understand war. It doesn't understand who declares war and what are the reaction to this declaration of war. They don't understand that. We are sold that a country hates another country and a certain people hates other people. But the fact is, we can have a cup of coffee. We can even marry other people from other countries without a problem. It is the leadership that sells the division in humanity.